going? And welcome back to another episode of Mood for Feud. I'm your host Katya, and today I am in the mood to go through Atis and Anna Paul's response videos to Mikaela Testa's Unsaid podcast video, where she has been detailing her experiences of dating Atis and living with Anna, and we will also be covering some of the internet reactions to Atis and Anna's responses as well. Remember, if you enjoy the show and would like to support it, then please do leave a rating. You can leave comments on Spotify, written reviews on Apple Podcasts, and you can follow the show so you never miss an episode. I'm also on socials at Mood for Feud, and I'm always looking to chat pop culture, so send me a message there. And I will also mention I do have a link in the show notes if you would like to buy me a coffee and support the show that way. I set the minimum to like $1 because truly any support is appreciated, and I will be using any funds I receive to upgrading my podcast gear, which hopefully means that I can keep delivering content and keep improving my show. But just thought I'd let you know that is also in the show notes down below. Let's get into things. Now, first of all, part 3 of Mikaela Testa's Unsaid podcast is coming out on Saturday, I believe, Saturday, April 12th. My recap for part 3 will be coming out midweek following that. I have also recapped part 1 and part 2 of her podcast, so if you want to check those out, I will be linking those in the show notes. But for this episode, we will be going over the responses made by Atis and Anna Paul. These came out Wednesday, 2nd of April, a few days after Mikaela had released part 2 of her podcast, and they both released on the same day. I think Atis's came out first. His was a statement on Instagram, and then shortly after he posted this, Anna posted a video on TikTok as well. So they very much like coordinated their response. I do think this was a bit tactical, right? Anna has a lot of loyal fans. She appeals more, I would say, to people out of her and Atis, so it makes sense for her to use the visual forum, post something on TikTok, you know, where she's talking to the camera, she's talking to her fans and trying to convince them that basically everything Mikaela is saying is untrue. And then it makes sense to me that Atis opted for an Instagram statement. He posted his statement across several different slides, which we will be going through. I'll read everything out. And he also posted some screenshots of his own. You know, they each came with their own receipts. There was some thinking behind how this was done, right? Like Atis coming out with a video, I feel like it wouldn't have done well. I think it's in his best interest to not show his face and to make this quite serious in tone style statement, and then leave Anna to do that more of like trying to connect with people, trying to talk directly to the camera. So anyway, these all came out on Wednesday, which is of course exactly when I was recording my part 2 recap, which means I wasn't able to talk about the statements in that episode. So let's all get up to speed with the statements. I'm going to start off with Atis's. Also, when he posted this, he turned the comments off. So you can't have any kind of like discourse on the actual post. That's already sus to me, you know. If we compare that to Mikaela, anything she's ever said, the comments are on. You're allowed to discuss it on her specific posts. But yeah, his comments are off. And also all his previous posts, the comments have been limited, so he's not interested in what anyone thinks about this statement. He's going to put it out there. He's not accepting any kind of discussion. Okay, his statement begins. I'm sorry it's taken me this long to speak. I had hoped that Mick would find peace after telling her story and I could continue to stay off the internet. But it seems she is intent on using our toxic relationship as a weapon to destroy Anna and assume her life. I want to start by saying Anna had no place in our relationship, and surely in 2025 we can agree that my mistakes are mine. Just because Anna is the well-known one, that doesn't excuse blaming another woman for the mistakes of her brother. The blame rests with me and Mick. To blame my bad choices and actions on another woman for clicks and views is disgusting. Our relationship was toxic, unhealthy, and destroyed both of our mental health. Some of the stories she has told are true. Most are absurdly exaggerated, and some are so twisted I'm in shock. My aim in posting isn't to say, look how great I am, or I was wonderful and she wasn't. I was awful and I know that. But even in my darkest moments, I wasn't the person she has invented in her mission to become Australia's most followed influencer. I was a damaged, insecure, and sad person throughout our relationship. I did struggle with my mental health, and that's no secret, and I regret that anyone ever had to bear that burden, especially my girlfriend. Mick has also struggled with her mental health from day one, sharing disturbing and difficult stories from her childhood. So let's pause. A couple of things there. Right at the start of his statement, he is urging people to leave Anna out of this. He is doing this from the perspective of protecting Anna and guys, let's not pit women against each other. Normally, okay, for any other couple or any other family, I would agree. I would say if we are talking about people's relationship, we don't need to include their siblings. Their siblings don't have place in their relationship, and so it's weird to bring them into this. Now, the reason why I don't think this quite applies to this specific context is because of how close Anna and Atis are, and the fact that when Mikaela and Atis were dating, they were living with Anna and her family. They were in close proximity. Mikaela has said that Anna was with them most of the time. They would get maybe, a couple of trips away by themselves or a couple of hours in a day away by themselves. But for the norm of their relationship was for Anna and Glenn at the time as well, I guess, to be very close. They all did hang out a lot together, and we saw this. We saw this in their content. We saw this in the vlogs that they were posting. They were always together. And so because of how close they are, and because of the fact that they all live together, because of all that, that is why I think it is actually appropriate to talk about them in this entire context. And I think it makes sense because now Anna is kind of not part of their relationship, obviously, but she is a dominant player in the dynamics of their relationship. She's someone who comes up often, who is very involved. The second thing that stood out to me is that he keeps saying, I wasn't a good person, but I wasn't as bad as what she said. But he also doesn't really take any accountability past that. And this is something that sets Mikaela apart from Anna and Atis, is that she is quite open about some of the shit she's said and done that she's not proud of, that she's embarrassed of, but kind of from a place of wanting to be authentic. And so for him to go like, I wasn't always the best person, but then not really explain that any further, or to go, some of what she said was true, but other stuff wasn't, not to tease that out for us. It was very vague. And I think that was also deliberate. And it's like, I'm not expecting the man to sit down and tell us every single shitty thing he's ever done. But if you're going to make a statement like, I've done bad stuff, I know that. Okay, well, we don't know which bits you're talking about right now. So give us some context. If you're really coming out here to try and enlighten us about your side of the story, then you kind of need to give us your side of the story. And then the last thing I'll say before we carry on with his statement is I find it interesting he brings up that both him and Mikaela struggled with mental health, and I believe this, right? Mikaela's already spoken out about her upbringing and how much she struggled with mental health, and it's very obvious just from everything that's been surfacing that Atis also struggles with his mental health. And I absolutely do believe that they were both toxic to one another in one way or the other, as is common when you've got this relationship where someone is incredibly abusive. If you're in a bad, toxic relationship environment, you're going to also exhibit some abusive tendencies yourself. I don't think it's as clear cut as there's always one person who's only ever doing things right and one person who's only ever doing things wrong, because the dynamic isn't healthy. And that's unfortunately the reality of it. And I do absolutely believe that they were probably both toxic to one another. But I do find it interesting just the way he's phrasing that. It's like, we were bad because of the context and because of our mental health, because he's really making it sound like the way he was with Mikaela is an isolated event and a one-in-a-kind situation where they were both with the wrong person, they brought out the worst in each other, and it led him to do some bad stuff. Nothing as bad as what she's accusing him of, but some vague bad stuff. This would maybe work or sit better with me. Maybe. Probably not, but maybe. If there weren't other people who have come forward with similar experiences to Mikaela. The way he keeps wording this as if it's so specific to who he was at the time he was with Mikaela is interesting to me. Alright, let's continue on. We all urged her to get help and supported in our own ways. Most of those conversations were in person, and those that are in voice notes and messages are not mine to share. They're far too dark and personal to be brought to the internet, especially when they're not my story to tell. Toxic doesn't even begin to describe how I was at at times, but to pretend that was one-sided is simply not true. A few key facts to clarify right away. I never had sex with Mick while she slept, and never ran at her with a knife or touched her in anger, and there was never a time when I cut my wrist and spread blood on a wall. I have the same receipts to show for that she does. None. Because it was just another one of the thousands of arguments we had, which is why I ended the relationship and refused her many attempts to get back together. It's not quite true that Mikaela has no receipts about that night with the knife, because she, as we know, was messaging Bailey while it was all happening. And then we also have the messages that Mikaela shared where she is looking back on this event in messages to Anna, and she says to Anna something about, the knife incident, and Anna says, oh my god, yes, that was so scary. And look, we don't know exactly what it was. Maybe it wasn't exactly him cutting his wrists and smearing blood on the walls, but we do know that there was a knife incident, and we do know from Anna's messages it scared her. I can't remember the exact wording, but she said something like, that was quite horrific, I've never seen him that bad. So yeah, I found it weird that he was like, she's got no receipts. But it's like, did you expect her to open her camera and start vlogging the whole experience? We have more receipts than other people might have. He continues, whilst many people might not be familiar with a BBL surgery and its recovery, please Google it. It involves horrendous pain and discomfort, and a requirement to sleep on large absorbent pads because of the leakage overnight. She knows this. She watched me clean up the pads every morning, bring fresh pads, and so on. I begged her to keep her garment on because the doctors were so clear, and yet she didn't care. Now, years later, to pretend that it would be possible for any kind of sexual activity to occur in that region without significant pain, let alone for her to remain asleep, is crazy. Keeping in mind, a BBL requires removing fat from all the areas surrounding. The swelling and the pain were intense. Standing up was a big win for her at that point, let alone what she's accusing me of. And secondly, she absolutely woke up every day with fluid running down her leg. You can read online, but living through it was graphic. The fluid coming out, the smell, the state of the pads the next morning, it was gross. During the entire recovery, we didn't sleep through virtually any night, even with heavy pain and sleep medications, because of how bad the discomfort was. This is not only untrue, but also logistically impossible. Oh my gosh. Look, of course I want to believe that isn't true, right? Because the alternative is so sinister. But again, we have to remember there are other girls who have reported similar abuse from him, and correlation isn't causation or whatever. But the reality is, Mikaela was very unwell during this time. We've got messages from Glenn where he's referencing a time where she would stay in the room for days on end without coming out. Mikaela's shared receipts about doctor appointments she was making because she was concerned for her health, and the doctor was concerned about her and was advising her to go to the police, which wouldn't be the case if the doctor was like, this is normal, leakage like this is very normal. Of course, I haven't had a BBL, so I can't speak from first-hand experience, but I will also add that other people who have had BBLs and know people who have had them have been talking online about how they didn't experience leakage the way Mikaela has described it. So I don't know, it is very weird, but I can see why he's trying to cast doubts around those accusations and trying to clear his name. And of course, everybody will react differently to a surgery, right? Everyone's very specific, but I don't know, I wasn't convinced. He continues, I'll come back to the end of our relationship later and start with the financial abuse first. To start, you need to understand that unless she's scheming or plotting against someone, Mick is extremely lazy, which is why she had an assistant for 3 years to help her do regular daily chores. She hated doing anything with her page because it was work. She complained endlessly about her previous manager and wanted me more involved because she wanted to make more money. Our roles from the outsets were clear. Mikaela's role was she would pose for photos or videos and edit her photos. My role was film and upload the content to the platform, feature in her socials to promote the page on my own socials, manage the page. Yes, that includes messages, so if you paid to message Mikaela during that time, you were talking to me or later to the employees we used. And from my 50% pay to promote the page through third parties. This was only during, God, his English is so bad, hang on. And from my 50% of the pay to promote the page through third parties. This was only during when I was paid 50%. I was reimbursed for promos prior when she had me the 30% her previous manager earned, who did a... What the fuck is this saying? My brain, I'm like reading it word for word and it doesn't make sense. Okay, what he's saying is, and the last part of his role was to use some of the money from his 50%, that she paid him. So first of all, thank you for admitting that you took 50%. Part of his role was to use that money to promote her OnlyFans page through third parties, and he was only doing that when he was being paid 50%. Before receiving 50%, he was being reimbursed for promos, and this was at a time where he was being paid 30%, which I think used to go to her manager, who did a fraction of this amount of work, but Mikaela obviously hired him and got rid of her previous manager. When we look at this, because he's purposefully written it out in a way that like it shows that Mikaela only did two things, right? Pose for photos and edit her photos, and then his role has like 4 bullet points listed. But if we think about it, it's like, okay, film and upload the content to the platform. All right, that's like I'd say that's a fair amount of work. And then feature in her socials to promote the page. Okay, so be in photos with your girlfriend on socials, like not a big deal. Promote the page on my own socials. Okay, so you had to post a link. You were already uploading it to her platform, so adding it to your own socials isn't a big issue. And then he says manage the page, including messages. And I feel like he thought that was kind of like oh snap, like Mikaela doesn't even write her own OnlyFans messages. And I don't know, this is kind of like how, when you turn 100, if you're from the Commonwealth, when you turn 100, you get a letter from the Queen or King. I don't actually think the Queen or King like sits down to write you this letter. I think part of why people pay to message people on OnlyFans is like the fantasy of it all, right? Of course, there's a chance that you're not actually messaging the specific person. Like it is a little bit disingenuous, but it's kind of just part of it. And then he shares his receipts, which is a bunch of screenshots showing the impact he had on her page, showing how little money it made in the months before he took over compared to when he was working on it. Okay, good for you. I still don't think 50% is valid for that. And then he also shows a bunch of screenshots of payments he allegedly made for promoting her page. And again, these are super blurry, so it's really hard to verify what these screenshots are actually showing. Yeah, honestly, I'm trying to zoom in and see some kind of details, and it's blurry. It's blurry to say the least. And then he shows some screenshots of him, talking to like meme pages, being like, post like this promo for Mikaela's OnlyFans, and kind of coordinating that. And again, like to me, I'm like, yep, that's what a manager should be doing. But again, I just don't know any other managers that take 50% of someone's money, unless they're like really bad. Okay, he continues, months after we broke up, she was still regularly trying to get me to take back her OnlyFans because of the substantial difference in income. She would regularly use money to control me or make me do whatever she wanted, refusing to pay me or reimburse me unless I did whatever she was asking. At one stage, she wanted to start a bikini brand but couldn't be bothered to do any research, so I found suppliers on Alibaba and arranged for samples that I paid for. She then refused to pay me back, rather demanding I work it off by taking over her page again. These are some screenshots of the bikini line that she wanted to launch that I sourced samples for her. And then he shares some screenshot conversation messages with her, which has her email account in them, and he says he did this because otherwise we wouldn't believe him that these messages were from Mikaela. But I don't know, this seemed crazy. And again, I don't doubt that this happened. Of course, it's much easier to outsource management of your page. And also the other thing, lest we forget, she really struggled to leave this relationship because it was abusive. So of course she was going to try find any way to get back into the relationship. As twisted as that sounds and as sad as that is, that's not tricky for me to believe. I'm kind of like, of course she would use this to try and get back together with you. Like, yeah, oh god. Anyway, because Atis shared Mikaela's iCloud address in his screenshots, she ended up getting inundated with text messages and stuff to the point where I think she's had to obviously change her address that she uses for her iMessages. And this is a pretty shit move, like he kind of defended himself because the iCloud account, I think it's called like Mikaela Paul at iCloud something. And so his defense was like, oh, I thought she would have changed her email address and not still be using the one that has my last name on it, which could be weird. I don't know. I'm kind of like, I know for a fact that some of my social media accounts are still using like my high school crush's birthdays as passwords and shit, because I just can't be bothered to change them, and it doesn't mean anything to me anymore. It's so stupid. Anyway, in retaliation for this, she ended up doxing Atis Paul as well, and she shared his number, and I was pretty disappointed when I saw this. I felt like she was stooping to his level. It seemed kind of immature and childish. Like, I get how enraged she was having her own contacts leaked like that, but yeah, I don't know, still disappointing to me. And then he addresses the YouTube video that they made against Alice Patterson. He says, Mick is rewriting history to pretend that she was manipulated into her involvement in the previous video, when in fact she was its chief architect. Don't get me wrong, I was there pushing everyone to do stupid things, making bad decision after bad decision. I'm not proud of any of this. You can even hear her, and me of course, telling Anna what to say in her clip, because she had a very clear idea of what she wanted from Anna. I think to call Mikaela the chief architect of that video against Alice is crazy, because Mikaela had no stakes in clearing your name at that point. Like, you guys were dating and that's it. You had a higher stake in defending yourself, and Anna had a higher stake with you being her brother. So anyway, I thought that was weird. And then he talks about, you know, wanting to show what kind of person Mikaela is. He shares screenshots where Mikaela's saying like she's gonna use a finster to try and like trick someone into doing something, and he writes, this receipt is quite confusing but is an example of how Mick would go off and do all sorts of really manipulative things, like pretend to be someone else to trick people into admitting a secret to her. As you can see, she is explaining to us and pointing out it's confusing because we had no idea what was happening. Don't get me wrong, once she explained it, I got involved. Again, I am absolutely not innocent here. Or recently when the Outspoken podcast talked about how she personally threatened to sue them when they covered the topic, something else we learned after she had done. This is something that I've never talked about publicly because I feel like nobody wants to hear it, but to understand Mick is to understand how she gets what she wants, whatever it takes. I feel like, again, as I was reading this for the first time, I wasn't really that surprised because Mikaela has been pretty open about some of the like batshit crazy stuff that she has done, especially when she was not in a good place. And that definitely doesn't excuse it. But again, she doesn't try to hide this side of her, or this isn't like news to anyone, because she's always talked very openly about all that. And it kind of comes back to the thing where like, I don't think Mikaela is a perfect person. And, you know, I don't think she's never done a bad thing in her entire life. But to me, to believe that she is a victim and that she was in an abusive relationship, I don't need her to be some kind of perfect angel, right? Like, I can believe her and also know that she did some questionable shit. She's even done some bad things, some things that I personally don't agree with or wouldn't do myself. But the two are mutually exclusive in my mind. He goes on, not long after I was managing her other page, she tried to get me to participate in content and I told her I wasn't comfortable. Later, we recorded a private and intimate video for our own personal use around 2 weeks into the relationship. Without my permission, she shared that video on her OF for a fee. I don't have a receipt of this. I'm sure it's on the internet somewhere. I'm ashamed to admit that she continued pushing and made a good argument about the money, and so I began filming content with her. When I look back, it's one of my biggest regrets because I can never take that off the internet. I should be clear, I did consent to the later videos. However, it's another example of how she is very smart at getting what she wants regardless of the cost. I'm not including any receipts from that content because nobody needs to see that. I agree. That is something that I hope she has receipts to show didn't happen, because that is quite concerning, and that is definitely something where, again, it doesn't negate any of Mikaela's claims, but that is something where I'm like, that is quite serious. Well, actually, it's illegal. So if that is true, I do think Mikaela should be held accountable for that. And, you know, that is quite a serious claim. And yeah, if she can dispel it, that's great. But I do think this is something she needs to address because just of how serious this claim is. And of course, despite Atis being a absolute piece of shit, he doesn't deserve, well, no one deserves to have intimate footage like that uploaded without their consent. I was desperate to get out of that relationship. I knew the two of us were awful together, equally toxic and destructive. Mick did everything she could to try and stay together, harassing me for months privately, and he shows messages where she is basically trying to get him to come back to her. Again, not surprised by this. And he also goes on to say how she would, in her public posts, constantly be talking about him and talking about stalking him or asking her followers to stalk him. And again, in all these screenshots, we can see her email account, her iCloud, that he's using to message her. He goes on, one of the many times she has used me online for content is when she accused me of stealing her crypto last year. I don't believe she thought it was me. I think it was another attempt to get me to talk to her, but we resolved it privately. I proved to her that I didn't have access and had no way to get the money, and then she publicly apologized. She has since deleted the apology, but the accusation video is still live. And this crypto thing is something we've talked about on this pod before as well. I'd say the most recent thing Mikaela had said, which was in her Unsaid podcast, is that to this day she believes he took that money and he just convinced her that he hadn't, but like in her heart of hearts she believes he did, so that's probably why she deleted her apology video. He continues, once we had split, Mick launched a campaign of publicly and privately stalking me and my family. She tracked every person that I spoke to because of her long track record of jealousy, but eventually I realized she knew things about my location that she couldn't have known. I then realized without my consent she had turned on location sharing. Once I turned that off, she then posted on TikTok offering $30,000 to anyone that provided my whereabouts and anyone that I was with. This is a story I was tagged in. I've removed the name for their privacy. And it's just someone basically saying Mikaela just is out here offering people $30,000. And I do remember this, and this is true. And yeah, again, not great behavior. I'm not excusing it or defending it. I just also don't think this negates any of her claims though. She would not only stalk my family, but she would also track any girl that I spoke to, post it online, and then privately attack me. This is the message she sent when Corinna and I followed each other after talking about horses. She also sent similar messages you've seen after Sofa and I spoke for a few minutes at a Stacks event. She then continued to attack an influencer because we exchanged public comments, and then he posts a series of TikTok videos from Mikaela's page where she's talking about stalking him or talking about being upset that he's hanging out with other girls. And like I remember all of this. I really do. And you know, since then Mikaela has kind of said, apart from a couple of videos at the start of their breakup, everything else she did after that was exaggerated for engagement and for content and was not genuine. And I kind of half believe that. Like I do think she exaggerated parts of it and shared so much because it was doing really well. You know, anytime she posted about Atis, her videos would do well. But I do also think it's plausible that she was craving that attention from him, right? This is what happens when you're in an abusive relationship. You glamorize the good times, the love bombing, and you want that back. Like this is why it takes on average a woman 7 times to leave an abusive relationship. We know all these statistics about abuse. We know it's not as clear cut as, you know, people try to make it out to be. Anyway, that is Atis's statement. I didn't think it did much. Personally, he shared a couple things. The whole vibe was pretty much like, Mikaela's crazy and people should leave Anna alone. That was kind of it. His whole reasoning for why Mikaela's doing this is because she wants attention and she is still obsessed with him. And maybe 2 years ago, I might have been more inclined to buy into this narrative because of the content Mikaela was posting at the time. But in recent years, you know, she's engaged now. She's very in love with her fiance, and I just don't think that argument holds as much as it used to. Okay, let's move on to Anna Paul's statement. As I mentioned, she posted a video on TikTok. I LOL'd because she captioned it "enough is enough," which is also what Diddy captioned his statement. Sorry, Diddy's not funny, but he also captioned his statement "enough is enough" when everyone was coming out about allegations following Cassie's lawsuit, and then he said all of these people just want my money, and that statement was made like 3 days before we saw the hotel footage where he was very clearly abusing Cassie. Anyway, I thought that wording choice from her was odd. Anna starts her statement by apologizing for the YouTube video she made against Alice, but not for the reasons you might think. Her reason for apologizing for this is because she was in a video where she talks about a relationship that she was never in, and she believes that only the 2 people in a relationship will know what it's like, and so she had no place being in that video because it didn't concern her. Girl, what? Okay, so you're saying I apologize for that video, but not because we horrifically bullied a 17-year-old who, by the way, was telling the truth, which led to my brother's conviction because everything this girl had to say held up in the court of law, and we just made this YouTube video to try and scare her into silence and use our overwhelming amounts of fame and popularity to silence a victim. No, it's just because, she spoke on a relationship that she wasn't in. That was the real sin. My God. And then she kind of uses that as leverage to say, and this is why I will not address any of the stuff about Mikaela and Atis, because that's their story to tell and I'm not part of their relationship. She continues to say, she didn't try and stop Mikaela from posting her podcast because she believes when a woman has a story to tell, she should be able to freely talk about it online. And so that's why she never stopped her. And she also says she hasn't sued Mikaela for defamation because defamation suits take 3 to 4 years and cost $500,000 to $1 million, and she wouldn't be able to jump online and talk freely by herself, and she'd rather keep her fans updated and not drag this out for 4 years. And that could very well be true, but it is also kind of sus because the stuff that Mikaela is accusing her and Atis of is career ending. So you think that you would invest $500,000 to $1 million across 4 years, you think you would invest that into it, right, to save your livelihood? Especially because I have no idea what her net worth is, but based on all the travel she does and where she lives and all of that, I can assume this amount of money spread across, several years is feasible for her. She goes on to say she didn't watch the podcast initially, but then people were mentioning all these receipts, and so she wanted to see what those were. And she goes, and there were no receipts. There were no receipts about me. The only receipts she had from me were photos taken from my public Instagram. I don't think that's quite true. That was part of what Mikaela shared, but she also shared messages between her and Anna, or between Anna and other people, that kind of depict her character or show the type of person she is. So I thought that was weird. Anna goes on to say that Mikaela wanted to hang out with her just a few months ago, invited her to a girls' trip. So, if she was really as horrible as Mikaela's saying, why would she be doing all that? She shares DMs from Mikaela asking her to go to Fiji with her and Corinna Kopf, a US-based content creator. And Mikaela has since said that Corinna really just wanted to meet Anna, and so at the time she was constantly asking can we invite Anna, can Anna come over? And Mikaela was kind of like, yeah, I don't care, it's been long enough, let's bury the hatchet. But of course Anna decided not to go on the trip. I'm still wondering if there would have been an alternate universe where Anna maybe does go on the trip, and maybe none of this actually comes to light because Mikaela decides to stay silent. She addresses the rumor that Atis takes her OnlyFans content, and she says this is just absolutely ridiculous. And she shares a screenshot of messages where someone else is accusing Atis of taking Anna's content, and Anna's saying, what the fuck? And Mikaela's replying ooh, what the fuck? Why would they say that? And they're all laughing about how ridiculous this is. I will say, in that screenshot, there is also a message from Anna saying, I didn't even have OnlyFans when they were together. The only OnlyFans thing Atis has ever taken of me was in Bali, of both of us. But that was 2 years ago, and we never said who'd recorded that. So I don't know, it's weird to say Atis has never taken my OnlyFans content and then share a receipt that very clearly states you saying there was at least one time where this happened, which in my mind is one time too many. Now, Mikaela's since posted receipts proving that Atis has taken OF content of her and Mikaela. Lilith Cavalier has also shared stories that Atis took OnlyFans content of her and Anna, so I don't know. She goes on to address the animal cruelty claims, saying that she's never clipped her bird's wings. She shares photos where they don't have clipped wings, but then it is also weird because in some of her older vlogs you can see clipped wings. I don't know, I'm not a bird expert, maybe the wings just looked clipped, but yeah, it was weird. And then she goes on to say that she responsibly had to rehome some of her birds because they weren't getting along with other birds, and so it wasn't a good environment for them, and that she was very careful for who she rehomed the birds to and was quite selective because she wanted them to go to a good home. Again, this is weird because we do have other people besides Mick who have seen that infamous room with all the bird cages in it, but I'm glad to hear that some of her birds got rehomed. Thank God for that. She then goes through all of her animals and kind of explains where they ended up and why, and then she says Mikaela is projecting with this accusation because Mikaela got her assistant to dump her cat at a shelter when he became a minor inconvenience for her. Now, this is another claim that Mikaela has since disproven, but that was kind of Anna's reasoning for why animal cruelty is even being brought up. She then shares the analytics from her socials showing that majority of her followers are not under 18. This is a weird receipt for me because you can obviously lie about your age when you set up an account. And look, that's not her responsibility. Like, she can't be in charge of making sure there's no minors watching her content. But I think the bigger receipt about who Anna's fan base are is her pop-ups, right? Because her pop-ups are only going to be attended by like her hardcore fans. And when I tell you these skincare pop-ups and whatnot that she does, meet and greets, whatever, are inundated with young people. And that to me just says more than analytics stats, because you can lie about your age when you sign up to an app. You know, if you do a pop-up and it's all a fuck ton of high schoolers, and you know, I've brought this up before, but I do very clearly remember the trend that was going around in 2022 of high schoolers making Anna Paul shrines in their school bathrooms, in their classrooms, and Anna commenting and reposting some of these. So again, you can't really say all that when you were encouraging your high school fans. She then tries to like turn this back around on Mikaela, saying, you know, what's Mikaela doing while all of this drama is going on and she's got lots of eyes on her page? Oh, she's been promoting her OnlyFans. She goes on to say, this is really unethical because there will be children going to your page trying to find out the tea, and they're going to click on that link which takes them to your OnlyFans, and on that OnlyFans is videos of Mikaela and her partner having sex. And I don't know, the way she says all this, first of all, of course Mikaela's going to promote her OnlyFans while her page is getting a lot of engagement. Are you dumb? Like, but why do you think there will be children trying to find out the tea? Is it because you have a lot of children who follow you, and so now this is going to be drawing them to Mikaela's page? I don't know, that was weird. And then it was the way she was talking about where you can find videos of Mikaela and her partner having sex, and it's like, well, yeah, that's kind of what adult content is. That's the type of content that is on OnlyFans. And she goes on to say, I don't do anything crazy. I haven't even shown my bare chest on there. And it's like, okay, good for you. Like, I don't know, the whole thing, I might include a clip. It was just the way she said it came across really like sex worker shamey, and it's like, how are you, an OnlyFans creator, gonna rag on someone else for creating OnlyFans content?
What does she do? She posts slide after slide after slide on her Instagram story of a link to her other page where you can buy videos of her and her partner having sexual intercourse. That's how concerned she is, because I am so gross. And let me just say, I haven't talked about my other site on TikTok in years, and I've promoted it maybe twice in the last 12 months on Instagram. Yet she's so concerned that I'm so disgusting. And you know what? Since we're out here clarifying absolutely everything, I don't do anything crazy on there. I haven't even shown my bare chest on there.
She once again addresses the rumors that her dad is homeless, saying this is completely unfounded. She says, Mikaela, my dad is not a piece of content for your podcast. She gets quite intense about it.
Mikaela, my dad is none of your business. He's not a piece of content for your podcast.
And again, any other time I would absolutely agree, except for the fact that these parents were constantly in Mikaela's life while she was living with Anna and Atis Paul. So she does know them. And in my mind, you know, she does have experiences with them that she is allowed to talk about and share. Anyway, she goes on to show screenshots of her sending money to her dad in the last 12 months. This timing's really weird because it kind of lines up with when Veruca first made the claim that Hans Paul is homeless. I don't know, maybe something changed after that, or who knows. She also shows text message exchanges between her and her dad, and that, you know, the messages are nice, there's a lot of hearts, blah blah blah. I don't think she's like consistently a bitch. I think she has like bitchy moments, right? She addresses one of the messages where she calls Glenn's dad fat, which Mikaela had shared in her podcast, and she shows the messages surrounding it and says, you know, she used that that word not in a derogatory way. It was just in a like to describe being overweight. And she says, you know, Glenn's dad was trying to be healthy, so she was trying to help him and was asking Glenn to send him some content from a creator who was showing that drinking alcohol is like worse for your weight than eating junk food or something. And that's fine. Like, you know, that one message, she might have been using that term not in a derogatory way. But this wasn't the only message that Mikaela had about Anna calling someone fat. So she kind of addressed one and then was like, and that means that all the others are also fake. Then she goes on to show that she is a kind and supportive friend to Mikaela, and she shares messages where she's expressing care and concern because Mikaela is hearing voices. And again, this seems so strategic to me, because it's like, if you really were a really caring and loving friend to Mikaela, I'm sure you've been reassuring or been nice to her in many different contexts, but you bring up the one talking about Mikaela hearing voices or Mikaela potentially having schizophrenia. It goes hand in hand with Atis's statement, and they're really trying to push this narrative that Mikaela's crazy and she sees things and she hears things that aren't true and you can't trust her. And, you know, guess who else they tried to convince us was crazy and attention-seeking? Alice Patterson. And guess what? She got Atis's conviction, so I don't know. Okay, she goes on to say that the eyes thing, you know, her saying Mikaela's eyes are too close together, are also untrue. She says this was one of Mikaela's own insecurities that she constantly needed reassurance from. And then she also says, you know, it's interesting that the two girls that Mikaela named as people that I've said eyes are too close together, these are two girls that Atis was interested in, and she's kind of trying to say, so that was the real motive there, is Mikaela was jealous of them, and so she kind of twisted her own insecurity onto them. And this could of course be true, right? This is one of those claims where we will never really know what happened, but can I just say, it is not crazy to me to think that Anna likes to also tear down the girls that Atis dates, right? So her going, of course she named these two people because they're both girls that Atis was interested in, and I'm kind of like, knowing what we kind of know about you from what people have said and the way people talk about you and the way you kind of are with Atis, like all protective and stuff, it's not weird to me to think that the types of girls Atis is interested in would also be the types of girls that you like to tear down. And then she rapid fires some other claims that she says are not true. She says her and Atis can't message, they don't write in German, so they wouldn't be messaging in German. She says, oh, Mikaela didn't meet requirements for monetizing on YouTube, so her trying to say I'm not monetizing because I don't want to make money off my abuse story is just because she couldn't make money from it. And that is true before she started posting. Her channel didn't have the, you know, requirements needed to monetize, but definitely ever since that first part dropped, she could have 100% monetized from YouTube. That video has millions of views and so much engagement, and she's got a lot of subscribers. She says our old house was not demolished. She says her little illegal lottery moment wasn't actually illegal because it was under $3,000 as the cash prize. She says she doesn't delete Mikaela's comments off her videos. She says she loves Jack Cooper and that before she met him she called him a clout chaser, but that was just because she didn't know him, and then she met him and loved him. And she says they are still good friends, and she shows all these blurred messages of them exchanging messages, which Jack has since rebutted this, by the way. He jumped on and was like, no, we're not good friends. We've met twice at an event, and all those blurred messages she showed was just us replying to stories, but it wasn't anything personal. It's not like they're out here chit-chatting all the time. She calls out Mikaela for lying about her surgery, and then she brings up how Mikaela dated an underage kid Leroy. And again, this isn't a new accusation. This is something that has floated around previously. And Mikaela has also addressed this multiple times. And basically, of course, problematic if she knew the Kid Leroy's real age, right? Not okay. Doesn't negate any of the shit Anna and Atis have done, but also like needs to take accountability. But Mikaela has said since that the Kid Leroy basically lied about his age, and he was also in like 18 plus clubs and stuff, which made her believe again that he was not as young as he actually was.
And there's one photo of me and a certain individual from the industry always being brought up, always being used. That photo of us was taken before we even really knew each other. That was the first time we met, and that photo was used by his friend. It was like Polaroids, and it was also put on SoundCloud at some stage. This person had told me they were older. All of their friends were way older, my age, and they were going to venues where you needed to be 18 plus 4. I was deceived. I did not have any relations with this person. As I said, I saw this person a year and a half later when they were of age, of consent, and I'm never going to hear the end of it. This person does not deserve to be brought up all the fucking time. Like, can we just leave the past in the past?
It's not great. It's kind of that thing where it's like, do you have to like ID check everyone that you are dating? And I don't know. It is definitely a murky one, but again, it's something that she's actually addressed and talked about. And then the second problematic thing that Anna brought up was that Mikaela sends nudes in a chat to 14-year-old boys. And she has some screenshots for this. There's no timestamps, there's no names. It's really hard to tell what's actually going on. Mikaela again has addressed this, saying that the photos she sent into that chat were not actually nudes. She, all her private parts are covered, and that it was basically a massive group chat with a bunch of people that she knew, and there were a couple users in there who she didn't know.
And those screenshots she put up of an alleged conversation between people that were underage or this and that, that photo that she blurred is not even I'm covered in that photo. The shirt I'm wearing is Atis's shirt. The background is the bedroom that we had. Then when I read the chats, I realized I was in a group chat with all of my friends, and there was 2 boys in it. They were saying they were 18. And the timestamp where the photo was sent, that's not the time that photo was sent. It's performative. It's performative to the public. I don't even know what happened to that chat. My account is gone. If there is any screenshots from before 2022, that's not even real. That's not my Instagram account. This is a new Instagram account. During mine and A's relationship, I would text people on Instagram and send cheeky-ish photos to my OF subscribers. It was all promo and all work, and none of these pics are knackered. None of them. And they were saying they were 18. They were subbed. Like, oh my God. And I can't even tell those screenshots are real, because as I said, in that photo, I was dating Atis, and I would have got, if he caught me doing that, that was OF stuff.
I would like her to speak more on this, because of course this is again like one of those things where it's more serious. Regardless of whether she was nude or not, I'm of the opinion like it's still weird to send provocative photos into a group chat, especially if you don't 100% know that everyone in that group chat is of an appropriate age. But it is something she's talked about. Again, it's not something she's trying to hide. And then Anna's statement ends with a voice note, which I think I'll include. Mind you, Mikaela has reposted this voice note to her own account as well, but yeah, this is the voice note.
This is the real reason that she started all of this.
My goal is to make sure she doesn't fucking post a thing. Because remember how I told you she would always copy me, she would always steal my stories, steal my personality, everything, the car idea, all of that. She stole it from me. I'm supposed to be the one with 7 million followers. I'm going to be vlogging after this, and everyone's going to need someone to watch because everyone's addicted to watching her, that they're going to watch me, and I'm going to live that life that I should have had. And this doesn't come from jealousy. This just comes from a siphoning energy bitch.
And I won't lie, this eats. When I heard this, I was like, icon. I don't know, people were going crazy over this. They were like, Anna has a voice note that proves everything that Mikaela says is fake. And I'm like, where's the proof? This to me sounds like a girl who's been fucked over year after year after year and has finally had enough. To kind of summarize both of those statements, there's a couple of claims that they made that I would like Mikaela to speak on. She already has a little bit, but she did say that there was going to be a part 4 to her podcast, which will be her being able to respond directly to each of those claims in the statement. And I do really hope she clears anything up. The thing with the Kid Leroy, which kind of she's already cleared up a bit on the internet previously. The nudes in the chat to 14-year-old boys, because that, if that's true, that's obviously like so fucked up. Uploading content with Atis without his consent. Those are really the like main ones where I'm like, that's not good. And if that's true, you need to take accountability. But again, none of those things to me negate any of the claims she's made against Anna and Atis. Okay, now the second that these statements came out, Mikaela and Veruca jump online and they're immediately posting videos about every single point that Anna has made in her TikTok and are able to counteract it with something. This kind of just shows like the fact that they're able to do this within hours of the video being posted. To me, that just makes it more genuine, because it's like if you were lying, you'd have to like sit down and like really think and you know, try to find some straws of evidence that support your story. But they were really like going at it. Lilith also jumped back online, made some more videos just reiterating her story and also confirming that Atis had taken OnlyFans content of her and Anna. Atis's best friend from school jumps on. She goes on to say that she was friends with Atis while the whole Alice fiasco was happening, and that at the end of it she actually became friends with Alice because she saw how poorly that family were treating her and she was pretty disgusted and upset with how Atis handled the whole situation. She says the Paul siblings absolutely do have a superiority complex, and she says as she was watching Mikaela's video, she kept thinking like, oh my god, that's what they did to Alice. That's what happened to Alice as well. So she's kind of saying she 100% believes Mikaela, and she also says Atis would say Anna is the hottest girl in school, which is like, yikes. Alice Patterson jumped on. She made a video saying she didn't want to talk about all this because she was trying to protect her peace, but now that the Pauls have made a statement, you know, she's jumped on. She just goes on to once again confirm that Anna and Atis would use their fame to bully her and that they absolutely spoke badly about her behind her back. She shares messages of Anna and Atis laughing about a TikTok she'd posted, and this was quite some time after her and Atis had dated, so it's like they're just to this day probably still making fun of her. She reveals that Atis had offered her $42,000 to take as hush money, which she refused to take. She explains how she couldn't finish school because of how bad the bullying was, and that they were absolutely comfortable using their platforms to bully her. And she goes on to say, you know, Mikaela has never painted herself as a saint. She's never claimed to be perfect. And that's also the key difference that I see here, is that out of these two groups of people, you know, Mikaela and the Paul siblings, only one person has kind of said, yeah, I've done some bad shit and here is what I've done. Because Atis's little half accountability thing of like, I've done some bad stuff, and then leaving it at that is, I don't know, not really cutting the mustard. She also shows a message that Atis had sent one of his friends, and that friend had then showed it to Alice. And in the message, Atis is saying, Anna showed mum Alice and they all reckon she's ugly. And she says this was at a time when she was 13. And she also shows some of the like gaslighty messages he used to send her while they were together. Like, for example, he would tell her his biggest turn on is how quickly she forgives him when she's mad. She says he had an obsession with violence, tasers and knives, all that kind of thing. And she also shares a very horrific photo of him crying, and she says this was quite a regular thing where he would send her photos of him crying because of how scared he was to lose her. Again, super manipulative and very intense for like a 13-14-year-old to be dealing with, you know? My gosh. And if that wasn't enough for you, Jjemmya also jumps on. Who's Jjemmya? I don't think I've actually spoken about her in this podcast before. She's much more private compared to Alice and Mikaela, but she has been sharing her story on her Instagram account, and she stands with Mikaela and Alice. She shared messages between her and Atis where she was explaining to him that she was upset after a sexual interaction they had, where she had said to him that she wasn't interested in having sex, and he kind of pushed and pushed and pushed to the point where she then just, you know, decided to go ahead. She shares a text exchange where he says, but Jjemmya, if you feel raped, please tell me. She replies, I do. And he says, what should we do? I'm sorry you feel that way. So yeah, not amazing. And she also has a lot of screenshots where he's, you know, upset because someone has followed her, or upset because she started following someone else, and just kind of showing how controlling he was. The text between Jjemmya and Atis are horrific. There's just a lot where he's saying, you know, I have a Jjemmya fetish, you are so soft and small and light, you are tiny, you have my heart, you are my fetish. It's creepy. It's so creepy. And I know they were dating, but it's still creepy. And then she also shares a photo that someone had posted to TikTok of Atis taking what looks like a younger girl to the pharmacy. And she captioned this, "You found a girl that looks near identical to me. Are you going to torment her the same way? You are a sick man. The nerve you have to continue the way you do is unbelievable. I cannot believe I ever respected you. Seek help before you ruin more young girls' lives." And these pharmacy photos, Mikaela also posted to her story and said, "This man is known to prey on women on dating apps, uses his sister's fame to impress them, makes them sign NDAs, gets them so high they don't really remember. He has used the same hotels and pharmacy for the plan B. History repeats itself with this person. I'm glad the public is paying attention. This person has been charged with rape and then accused by 2 other girls." So yeah, it doesn't seem like he is changing his ways at all. And I saw a lot of people after Atis and Anna's statements came out being like, "Oh wait, now I don't know what side to be on," or "Oh, I'm sorry guys, I'm team Anna again," which again, to me, like, this shouldn't be like a teams thing. We're not team this or team that or whatever. Like, it's not team Edward or Jacob. Like, we're talking about serious crimes here. To that, I kind of just say, regardless of whether you like Mikaela or whether she's lied before or whether she is, 100% accurate all the time, which is of course impossible because of how the brain works, especially in traumatic situations, and unfortunately this like inability to remember things 100% accurately is something that abusers will use to their advantage. And even if there are things that Mikaela has done which are also illegal or which are bad, none of that will change my mind that Atis Paul is dangerous and should be in prison. It won't change my mind that Mikaela was in a bad relationship and that she suffered abuse. And how much more do people need? Because we've got 3 women who dated Atis, plus multiple ex-friends of the family, plus other influencers who knew them from online interactions or who met them at events, all saying that they believe Mikaela. Why are we still, why are there still people who are like, "Oh, this is so tricky. That one voice note, oh damn, that's really making me question reality." And it's frustrating for me. I don't think anything that Anna and Atis actually provided us negates any of Mikaela's claims against Atis abusing her, because they really went for like character assassination and, "Oh, but she's done bad things too." Yeah, I'm not on here saying Mikaela is an angel. I'm not on here defending anything she's ever done, She's not a perfect person. She's told us this much herself, but we have to get comfortable as a society knowing that someone might have done bad things themselves and can also still be a victim of a horrific situation. But yeah, I do hope she addresses some of those more serious claims. The last thing I'll say is that Jjemmya, Alice and Mikaela have made a group chat, and Mikaela says that they have a fuck ton of receipts between them. And really, I'm like, take it to court, girlies. Like, I know Mikaela said previously she's skeptical about how good the court actually is at serving justice, and I fully understand why she feels that way. But if there's 3 of them, if they've pulled together all of their information, take it to court. I want to see that man behind bars. Anywho, that is a little recap of what's been happening this last week. And make sure you stick around and keep an eye out for when I recap part 3 of Mikaela Testa's Unsaid podcast. Don't forget to rate and review the show if you enjoy it, and please feel free to leave a written review or comment. I love my words of affirmation. And you can connect with me on socials at Mood for Feud. If you'd like to buy me a coffee, I have a link in the show notes, and all funds will go towards upgrading my gear. I hope everyone is crushing their goals this week, and of course, keeping out of trouble. Don't get into any feuds, and I'll talk to you all next week. Bye.